Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Equine Essentials. I'm your host, Gray Parks, nutritionist for ProTrition Feeds, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about fueling your horse's performance. Most of our horses, no matter what age they are, what breed, what discipline, they are performance animals. So performance horses are athletes, and we need to feed those athletes to ensure they have the proper fuel to be able to do the jobs that we want to do with them. So let's start by thinking about how much fuel a horse needs on a given day. So these are the calorie requirements that a typical horse that weighs about 1,100 pounds, which would be your average quarter horse, small thoroughbred, Arabian type horse, whether they're at maintenance doing nothing, which can be as little as 15,000 calories a day or as many as 18,000 calories a day if they're a hard keeper, all the way up to very heavy work. And I've also given you some examples here of what types of horses would fall into these categories. So for example, light work is most of our horses. Trail horses, pleasure horses, recreational riding, horses that you ride 1 to 3 times a week, maybe for an hour or so here and there. They're gonna fall into that light work category. Horses in moderate work are typical show horses or lesson horses that get ridden 5 or more days per week and get ridden fairly intensively when they do work. Most of us like to call our horses' work programs heavy work, but really heavy work only applies to a horse in an intense show schedule, a horse training for endurance riding and competing up to 50 miles at a contest. Very heavy work is reserved for race horses, Olympic level eventers, and 100-mile endurance horses. So most of us don't fall there. I put one additional category on the slide for this presentation to show you that performance horses do not, by and large, have the highest calorie requirements. You'll see that a lactating mare actually has a higher calorie requirement than a horse in heavy work, which is why keeping weight on those mares can be our biggest challenge. For performance horses, often the opposite is our problem because they're not in particularly heavy work. Keeping the weight off of them, just like with us, can be a little more problematic in most cases. But whether the horse is at maintenance or in moderate work, you're looking at somewhere between 15,000 and 23,000 calories in a day for that horse. Let's compare that to where most of the horse's calories are going to come from, and that is its forage. So these are examples from 4 different hay tests that I have gotten back recently. Everything from a typical mixed grass, fescue type hay to a pure alfalfa. And you'll see that these hay samples ranged from about 650 all the way up to 860 calories per pound of hay. So if you're feeding that horse 2% of his body weight or 22 pounds per day, then those horses at maintenance can easily maintain their body condition on all except for the mixed grass hay sample here. Even in light to moderate work, most horses can meet their energy requirements from 3 out of these 4 hay samples. That doesn't mean they're meeting all of their other nutrient requirements, but calories are not a problem. However, when you get into those horses in moderate to heavy work, or a lactating mare, for example, none of these hays at 2% of body weight are going to get that horse anywhere near its calorie requirement. So when we're adding extra calories, we want to make sure that we're fueling that horse's body appropriately for what we expect the horse to do. That means we do have to understand a little bit about energy metabolism and where horses get energy to work. The body has energy sources stored in the muscle and in the liver, and in the muscle in particular in the horse, there's a tremendous amount of a compound called glycogen, which is stored starch that the horse can mobilize relatively easily for exercise. Glucose can also be mobilized out of the liver, and then fatty acids can be mobilized out of the blood. We'll look in just a moment about which types of exercises need these substrates to work, but at the end of the day, it's important to recognize that wherever in the body that energy is coming from, it has to be replaced after the horse has exercised. Otherwise, the horse won't be able to perform again tomorrow or the next day or the next day. We have to keep refueling the body between exercise sessions to make sure that we're getting enough energy for that horse to work. So what kind of fuel is going to be the most efficient for that horse will depend upon what we're doing with the horse. Energy can be produced in either in aerobic or anaerobic fashion. And aerobic metabolism is going to create energy primarily from fats and carbohydrates, but also a little bit from some protein. Aerobic metabolism can provide a lot of energy over a long period of time, but it's a little bit slower. You're not going to have instantaneous energy release in aerobic metabolism. Instantaneous energy can be met by anaerobic metabolism, which relies on carbohydrates, especially glucose, to be able to create energy for that body to move. Anaerobic metabolism is very fast, but it's less efficient, so it produces less energy overall. And also, there's not going to be a large amount of substrate left for that metabolism. Anaerobic metabolism also has a byproduct called lactic acid that you may have heard about that causes muscle fatigue and soreness. So if you've ever performed a really heavy exercise bout, maybe you decided to lift weights as a New Year's resolution and were really sore the next day, that's a side effect of using up all of the stored carbohydrates in your muscles and having this tremendous amount of lactic acid that has to be mobilized. Now, most of the things that we do with our horses require both types of fuel. The only things that really lean heavily one way or the other are examples of things like endurance riding, where almost all of the horse's energy can come easily from aerobic slow burn metabolism, or something like barrel racing, where most of the horse's energy can come from that anaerobic quick burst, don't need a lot of sustained energy type of work. But for the majority of performance horses, show horses, even these endurance horses on conditioning days or barrel horses on training days, you need to fuel both types of performance. So you need to supply the horse with the appropriate amounts of the right carbohydrates, the right fats, and protein to ensure the horse has plenty of energy for all the types of work that you want that horse to perform. So how can we fuel these horses? Well, depending upon what we do with the horse, we want to choose a concentrate that meets not just their energy, but also their nutrient needs at an appropriate level with the right fuel sources. So for most of those horses that are at maintenance, that are in light work, or that are even in moderate work, but are easy keepers, a ration balancing product is going to be your best choice. There are several reasons we want to go this way with these horses. Remember, even the lowest quality hay example I showed you for these horses can meet the majority of their energy requirements. So we don't need a lot of calories for these horses. Ration balancers have a low feeding rate of 1 to 2 pounds per horse per day, which means you're not adding a tremendous amount of extra calories on top of their hay. They're low in non-structural carbohydrates or sugar and starches. So these horses that are relying primarily on fat as a slow burn aerobic energy source don't need a lot of sugar and starch for that anaerobic burst type energy. These products also are going to allow you to make sure that even though you're not feeding much feed, you're getting all the horse's protein, minerals, and vitamin needs met in that small 1 to 2 pound per day serving choice. But maybe your horse is in a little bit more work or just requires more calories, or you have a hay that's on the low end of that calorie spectrum. For those horses, you probably want to choose an example like the Pinnacle Low Starch product that we have here on our screen. These are still going to be low to moderate in those non-structural carbohydrates. Again, these horses aren't doing a lot of intensive work. They don't need a lot of starch in their diet. They're going to be low to moderate in their calorie density as well. So like most horse feeds, these products have, depending on the exact product we're looking at, between a 3 and 6 pound per day minimum feeding rate. At 12 to 1400 calories per pound of feed, then our very easy keepers are going to get fat if we try to feed them one of these products. But those harder keepers or harder working horses that are still not extremely difficult to keep weight on are going to do really well on a product like this typically. And finally, what about those horses that are hard to keep weight on or that are in moderate to heavy work? For these horses, we really want to focus on a high calorie product that's going to have multiple energy sources. So fat for their aerobic energy needs, some starch for their anaerobic portions of their exercise, and digestible fibers to help provide additional energy sources and keep their gut healthy. These products on the screen in particular range from between 1,400 calories per day with the Pinnacle 1200 high fat to 1,900 calories per day with the Purina Ultium at the top of the screen. So depending upon exactly how hard your horse is working and the quality of your hay, then you can choose the right calorie range for your horse and make sure that they can fuel all their types of performance. So tonight we've talked a little bit about energy metabolism in your horse, what hay can and can't do to meet your performance horse's energy needs, and how to choose the right concentrate to fill in those energy gaps. As always, I'm watching along with you tonight, and if you have questions, you are free to drop those in the comments on this video. Otherwise, please feel free to email me anytime at gray.parks@protritionfeed.com. Be on the lookout on this Facebook page, and in your emails, you will see a horse feed survey coming from us in the very near future. Otherwise, I hope to see you all again next month at our next Equine Essentials.